Hi everybody, and welcome to this revision video on the central nervous system as part of the neuropsychology topic for Stage 1 Psychology. Let's get started. So the central nervous system, or CNS, is the network of nerves and neurons that make up the brain and spinal cord. So like I said in my previous video, really important to remember that the CNS is made up of the brain and spinal cord, whereas everything else is categorized into the peripheral nervous system, which I'll talk about later in a separate video. So the CNS main role is to process information provided by the sensory systems in our body and to generate appropriate actions. So let's look at the brain and spinal cord in a little bit more detail. So our brain is a network of nerve cells essentially, and it processes information received through neural pathways or nerve pathways and directs actions within the body. So because of its role in overseeing almost everything that we think, feel and do, it is sometimes called the master organ. So the brain has over 100 billion neurons on its own, and it is extremely complex. It is nicknamed the most complex state of matter in the entire universe. So often you will hear it referred to as the master organ. So in conjunction with the brain, the spinal cord also makes up the central nervous system. So it's the long column of nerve tissue that runs from the base of our brain right down to our lower back. The actual spinal cord is encased in backbone, so it is protected, because if it was constantly bumped or hit, for example, it would obviously cause damage and not allow the messages to go from the brain down the spinal cord and then to transmit to our peripheral nervous system. So it needs protection, so that's why it's encased in backbone, and these individual bones or sections are called vertebrae. So it links the brain to the rest of the body essentially, and the spinal cord has two main functions: to pass sensory information from the peripheral nervous system, or PNS, back to the brain, and to pass information about movement from the brain to the peripheral nervous system so that actions can occur. So the spinal cord is often likened to a highway or a main road in a town. So it's the main road where most of the traffic, or in this case, most of the communication of neurons occurs. And it works with the peripheral nervous system, which are the surrounding suburbs and smaller side streets of our body. So in our arms and legs and so on, to be able to carry out the functions that they need to. So sometimes we have a spinal reflex as well. So you would have seen this when a doctor hits your knee, for example, and your leg automatically kicks up. So that's what we call a spinal reflex. So that's an involuntary response that does not require the brain. So this saves us time and protection from harm. So when we have our knee hit by a doctor and our leg goes up, that is a reflex, but it's actually coming from our spine rather than our brain. So we're not directly thinking that we're going to kick the doctor, all right, as in the workbook. All right, we did that in class in terms of the workbook question, but the spine will initiate this reflex to save time, and obviously works in conjunction with the rest of the body to react to external stimuli, which that is an example. So the nerves in our spinal cord are capable of initiating simple responses independently of the brain. And again, the reflex of hitting the knee and our leg going flying, or our leg kicking out, is a very, very common example. And as you can see here from the diagram here, you can see the spinal cord here, and it is obviously protected by the vertebrae in our spine. So I hope you found this video useful. Stay tuned for my other videos where I go through other parts of neuropsychology, the peripheral nervous system and the brain, and brain injury, illness and neurons. If you have any questions, you know what to do. Simply ask me in class or shoot me an email. Otherwise, happy revising.